The desert stretched, endless, under a sky turning the color of old bruises. Highway 40 cut through Montana like a scar, 2 lanes of cracked asphalt disappearing into mountains that rose like broken teeth against the horizon. The truck's headlights carved a narrow tunnel through the gathering dark, illuminating nothing but more emptiness ahead. Garrett Sullivan's hands gripped the steering wheel at 10 and 2, exactly like they'd taught him in basic training 21 years ago. Old habits, the kind that kept you alive in Fallujah but made you look rigid everywhere else. His knuckles were white tendons standing out like cables under weathered skin. 39 years old and his hands looked 50. The desert did that. Combat did that. Time did that when you'd seen too much and forgotten how to unsee it. In the passenger seat, Atlas shifted. The German shepherd's amber eyes caught the dashboard light, reflecting it back like twin flames in the darkness. 6 years old, 78 pounds of muscle and instinct in something deeper that Garrett had stopped trying to name. The dog wore a vest that read PTSD, support animal, in bold letters, do not pet in smaller text beneath. Most people saw the vest and looked away. That was fine. Better than fine. The radio crackled with static, a weather report fading in and out. Snow warnings, road closures, temperatures dropping to single digits. Garrett reached forward and twisted the dial, silencing it. He didn't need a forecast to tell him what he could already feel in his bones. 14 hours on the road, and the last 3 had been nothing but cold seeping through the truck's failing heater, working its way into joints that remembered every hard landing, every forced march, every time his body had betrayed him and kept going anyway. Virginia to Montana, 1,800 miles, 1 wedding. His little brother getting married, and Garrett had promised he'd be there even though the thought of it sat in his stomach like lead. Crowds, cameras, expectations, all the things that made his skin crawl and his pulse spike and his breathing go shallow. But Tyler had asked, "Please, Garrett, I need you there." And what else could he say to that? The truck's engine coughed, a wet sound that didn't promise anything good. Garrett eased off the key, coaxing it, willing it to hold together for another 100 miles. Just 100 more. Then a motel, then sleep. Then tomorrow he could deal with everything else. Atlas whined softly, a sound buried deep in his chest. Garrett glanced over. The dog was staring at him, head tilted, ears forward. Reading him. Always reading him. "I'm okay, buddy," Garrett said. His voice came out, rough, unused. He'd spoken maybe 20 words all day, mostly to gas station attendants and rest stop cashiers. "Just tired, long drive." The dog's tail thumped once against the seat. Not convinced, but willing to wait. Patient. Atlas had patience Garrett had never managed to learn. The mountains grew closer, blacker, blocking out stars. Snow began to fall soft at first, then harder flakes catching in the headlights like white static. Garrett leaned forward, squinting. The windshield wipers scraped across glass, clearing crescent moons of visibility that filled again instantly. The road became suggestion more than certainty. A green sign emerged from the whitefish 12 miles. Garrett's shoulders dropped a fraction of an inch. 12 miles. He could do 12 miles. He'd done a 100-mile ruck march in ranger school with a broken toe and no sleep. 12 miles in a heated truck was nothing, except his hands were shaking. Small tremors that had nothing to do with the cold and everything to do with the thing that lived in his chest, the thing that had no name but showed up anyway, uninvited, unwelcome, undeniable. The thing that made him wake up at 4 in the morning with his fists clenched and his jaw aching and the taste of copper in his mouth. The thing Atlas was trained to sense, to interrupt, to pull him back from. The dog moved closer. His head came to rest on Garrett's thigh, heavy and warm and solid. Real. Present. Here. Garrett's breathing slowed. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. The way they'd taught him at the VA in those fluorescent lit rooms that smelled like instant coffee and desperation. Breathing exercises, grounding techniques, cognitive behavioral therapy, all the tools they gave you to manage the thing they couldn't fix. The snow fell harder. Whitefish appeared like a mirage, yellow lights bleeding through white. Small town, tourist town, the kind of place that thrived in summer and hunkered down in winter. Ski lodges and craft breweries and art galleries that sold landscape paintings to people from California. Garrett had looked it up online back when Tyler first told him the wedding would be here. Rachel's family was from Montana. Glacier National Park country. Big sky, clean air. All the things you said when you wanted to pretend civilization hadn't ruined everything yet. The main street was empty. 11:43 at night, and the whole town looked like it had rolled up and gone to bed. Christmas lights still hung from lampposts even though it was late October. A dog trotted across the intersection, appearing and disappearing in the sweep of Garrett's headlights. No collar, no owner, just moving through the cold like it belonged to him. Atlas's ears pricked forward, watching. His body tense, not aggressive, just alert. Aware. The way he got when something didn't fit the pattern. Easy, Garrett murmured. Motel signs began appearing. Vacancy and red neon, most of them. Budget chains, mom and pop operations, places that rented rooms by the hour or the night or the month, depending on what you needed and what you were running from. Garrett passed 3 before he saw the one that looked marginally less depressing than the others. Northwood's Inn. A carved wooden sign announced with a painting of a pine tree that had seen better decades. He pulled into the parking lot. Gravel crunched under tires. 6 vehicles total, spread across 30 spaces. Montana plates, Idaho plates, one from Washington. The motel was 2 stories, 30 rooms, exterior corridors with doors painted forest green. 70s architecture built for function over aesthetics. A vending machine glowed in the corner, humming to itself. The office was the only thing with lights on warm yellow, spilling through windows covered with decals advertising free Wi-Fi and continental breakfast. Garrett killed the engine. Silence crashed over him, thick and complete. Just wind and falling snow and his own breathing. He sat there, both hands still on the wheel, staring at the office door. Every instinct he'd developed over 8 years of military service said don't go in there. Scan first. Assess, identify exits, count potential threats, plan extraction routes. All the things that kept you alive in Helmand province but made you exhausted everywhere else. Atlas nuzzled his hand. The dog's nose was cold, wet, insistent. Yeah, Garrett said. I know. He reached for the folder on the dashboard. Manila worn soft at the edges, stuffed with papers, VA medical documentation, PTSD diagnosis from 3 separate psychologists, each one confirming what he already knew. Training certification for Atlas, complete with stamps and signatures, and proof that the dog wasn't just a pet, but a medical necessity, a living, breathing prescription for a condition that had no cure. Service dog registration official, laminated legitimate, everything he needed to prove what shouldn't need proving. He'd learned to carry it everywhere. Most places were fine. Most people saw the vest and didn't ask questions. Some asked anyway, polite curiosity, genuine interest. A few gave him trouble. Those were the ones who thought they knew better, who decided service dogs only counted if you were blind or in a wheelchair, who couldn't comprehend that invisible wounds needed visible support. Garrett grabbed his duffel from the back seat. 50 pounds packed with the efficiency of someone who'd lived out of bags for years. 3 days' worth of clothes, toiletries, dress uniform for the wedding. The photo he kept in a plastic sleeve, Martinez and Peterson and Williams grinning at the camera alive, whole unaware that in 6 hours they'd be gone. He opened the door. Cold slammed into him, stealing breath. The temperature had dropped 20 degrees since he'd last checked. Snow was accumulating, covering everything in white. Atlas jumped down beside him, landing soft despite his size, immediately taking position on Garrett's left. Trained behavior, instinct now. The dog's shoulder pressed against Garrett's leg as they walked, a constant reminder. I'm here. You're not alone. The office door chimed when Garrett pushed through. Heat hit him first, then light, then the smell of artificial pine from an air freshener plugged into the wall. The space was small, cramped, every surface covered with pamphlets advertising local attractions. Glacier tours, whitewater rafting, horseback riding. All the things people did when they came here for vacation instead of obligation. Behind the counter stood a young woman, early 20s, blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her name tag said Crystal in silver letters. She was typing on a computer, eyes fixed on the screen, fingers moving fast across the keyboard. She didn't look up when Garrett approached. Checking in, Garrett said. Reservation under Sullivan. One moment. Her voice was flat professional, the kind of tone that came from saying the same things 1,000 times. The keyboard kept clicking. Atlas sat down beside Garrett. Perfect posture, head up, eyes alert. The dog's vest was slightly rumpled from the drive, but the patches were still clearly visible. Service animal, do not pet, working dog. Garrett pulled out his wallet, credit card on the counter, folder beside it just in case. Just in case was always necessary. Crystal looked up from her screen. Her eyes went straight to Atlas. Something changed in her expression. Not hostile exactly, but close. A tightness around her mouth, a narrowing of her eyes. Garrett had seen that look before. Is that your dog? Yes, ma'am. He's a service animal. She stared at Atlas for a long moment. The dog stared back, calm, unblinking. Waiting. We have a pet policy, Crystal said. He's not a pet, he's a service dog. Right. The word came out wrong, weighted with disbelief. That's what everyone says. Garrett felt the first flicker of tension in his chest. Small, manageable, but present. His fingers tightened on the folder. Everything's documented here. VA medical records, training certification, service dog registration, federal law. Crystal didn't reach for the folder. Sir, I need to let you know about our animal fees. $200 for deep cleaning, plus 50 per night. Your reservation is for 3 nights, so that's $350 total. Garrett blinked. I'm sorry, what? $350 for the animal. Ma'am, I just explained. He's a service dog. Federal law, the Americans with Disabilities Act, specifically prohibits charging fees for legitimate service animals. Crystal's jaw tightened. Small movement, almost imperceptible, but Garrett's training caught it. Tension, defensiveness, walls going up. Our corporate office has been cracking down on this, she said. Too many people claim their pets are service animals just to avoid fees. We've seen all kinds of fake documentation. This isn't fake. That's what everyone says. Atlas moved closer to Garrett's leg. The dog had sensed something. The change in Garrett's breathing, maybe, or the subtle tension in his shoulders, or something deeper that humans couldn't detect, but dogs understood instinctively. Garrett kept his voice steady, level, controlled. The way they'd taught him to talk to enemy combatants, to hostile civilians, to people who wanted to kill you but might listen to reason first. Look, I understand you have policies to follow, but I'm telling you this is a legitimate service animal. I'm a Navy veteran. I have post-traumatic stress disorder. Atlas is trained specifically for PTSD support and detection. PTSD, Crystal interrupted. She looked him up and down, her gaze lingering on his face, his hands, his stance. You look fine to me. The words hit Garrett like a punch to the gut. Physical impact, even though she hadn't moved. You look fine to me, as if trauma wore a uniform, as if invisible wounds needed visible proof, as if 8 years in combat and 5 deployments and watching your friends die in your arms should leave marks people could see from across a counter. Excuse me, Garrett said. His voice came out quieter than intended. I'm just saying you don't look disabled. Crystal's tone was matter of fact, like she was commenting on the weather. Real service dogs are for blind people, or people in wheelchairs, not for, she waved her hand vaguely. Whatever you're claiming. Garrett's hands formed fists at his sides. Slow, controlled movement. Not aggression, just the body's automatic response to threat, to insult, to the kind of ignorance that felt like assault. Atlas pressed harder against his leg. Warm weight. Grounding pressure. The dog was doing his job, trying to keep Garrett present, trying to prevent the spiral. It wasn't working. What I'm claiming, Garrett said slowly, each word deliberate, is that I spent 8 years in special operations, 5 deployments, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. I watched my teammates die. I have nightmares that wake me up swinging, panic attacks that feel like heart attacks. This dog is the reason I can function in public spaces. And you're telling me I don't look disabled enough. Crystal's expression didn't change. If anything, she seemed annoyed. Inconvenienced by his existence, by his explanation, by his refusal to simply pay and disappear. Sir, I'm just doing my job. Corporate has strict policies about animals. If you don't want to pay the fee, you're welcome to find another motel. It's 11:45 at night. Your motel is the only one with availability within 50 miles. I have my brother's wedding this weekend. That's not really my problem. Garrett stared at her. He couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. 13 years of military service. 3 combat decorations. Missions classified enough that he'd never be able to talk about them. He'd faced insurgents, IEDs, ambushes, firefights. He'd been shot at, blown up, nearly killed more times than he could count. None of it had prepared him for standing in a motel lobby at midnight, being told his invisible wounds didn't count. Can I speak to a manager? Crystal sighed, heavy, dramatic, like he'd just asked her to solve world hunger. The night manager left an hour ago. General manager won't be in until morning. You can file a complaint online if you want. And in the meantime, you either pay the pet fee or you leave. She started typing on her computer. Garrett watched her fingers move across the keyboard, entering the charges, adding them to his bill without permission, without consent, without any legal right to do so. $350. Money that was supposed to go toward Tyler's wedding gift. Money he couldn't afford to lose. He was living on disability payments and occasional security consulting gigs, and 350 might as well be 3,000. But it wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about principle, about the law, about every veteran who would walk through these doors and after him and face the same ignorant assumptions, the same illegal demands, the same casual dismissal of their service and their sacrifice. Garrett pulled out his phone. "What are you doing?" Crystal asked sharply. "Recording this conversation. Documenting potential civil rights violations." "You can't do that. This is private property." "I'm documenting potential federal law violations. The Americans with Disabilities Act is very clear about this." Crystal's face flushed red. "Put that phone away or I'm calling security." "Go ahead." She glared at him for a long moment, hand hovering over the desk phone. Atlas whined softly. The sound cut through Garrett's anger, sharp and immediate. He looked down at the dog. Atlas was watching him with those eyes, ears back, body tense. Worried. The dog could feel everything Garrett was feeling. Every spike of stress, every surge of adrenaline, every desperate attempt to maintain control. But Crystal wasn't finished. "You know what?" Her voice rose loud enough to echo in the small office, loud enough to carry through the closed door to anyone outside. "I'm sick of people like you coming in here with your fake service dogs and your fake disabilities expecting special treatment. That dog doesn't even look like a real service animal." "What's that supposed to mean?" "He's too healthy, too well-groomed. Real service dogs look, I don't know, official. Yours looks like a pet." Garrett couldn't help it. He laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It came from somewhere deep and dark and exhausted, the place where he kept all the things he couldn't say out loud. "You think service dogs are supposed to look ragged? Unhealthy Ma'am Atlas costs $25,000 to train. He can detect a panic attack before I even know it's coming. He wakes me up from nightmares that would have me hurting myself or someone else. He's saved my life more times than I can count." "Anyone can say that. That's why I have documentation. Documentation anyone can print off the internet. These are official VA records." "Sure they are." The businessman near the vending machines had stopped pretending to mind his own business. He was watching the confrontation openly, now phone in his hand. An elderly couple on the lobby couch was whispering to each other, pointing. Garrett felt the weight of their attention like physical pressure. Combat had taught him how to handle attention when it came from enemy combatants. This was different. This was exposure, vulnerability. Standing in a public space, having his legitimacy questioned, his service dismissed, his wounds called into doubt. Atlas's breathing changed, became slower, more deliberate. A calming technique the dog had been trained to use when Garrett's stress levels spiked. Deep breaths, steady rhythm. The physical manifestation of calm offered up like a gift. It was working. Barely. "I want to be clear about something," Garrett said. His voice was quiet now, controlled, the kind of quiet that came before explosions. "What you're doing right now is illegal. Charging fees for a legitimate service animal violates the Americans with Disabilities Act. You can face federal fines. The motel can be sued. This is not a gray area." Crystal crossed her arms. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm informing you of the law." "Well, I know the law too, and I know my rights. I have the right to protect this motel from people who abuse the system." "I'm not abusing anything." "That's your opinion." Garrett closed his eyes for a moment. Breathe, count, ground yourself. All the techniques they'd taught him. All the tools that were supposed to help. But his body didn't listen to commands anymore, not like it used to. The panic came when it wanted, triggered by things that shouldn't matter. A crowded room, a loud noise, a stranger's hostility. Atlas moved to stand directly in front of Garrett. The dog looked up at him with steady eyes. The message was clear. Breathe, ground yourself. I'm here. Garrett put his hand on Atlas's head. The fur was soft under his fingers, warm, real. He focused on that sensation, the texture, the warmth, the steady rise and fall of the dog's breathing. Slowly the panic receded. Not gone, never gone, but manageable. Controlled. When Garrett opened his eyes, Crystal was watching him with something like contempt. "See," she said, "this is exactly what I'm talking about. All this drama over a pet fee. I just had a panic attack. You look it fine to me. That's because my dog caught it early. That's literally what he's trained to do." Crystal rolled her eyes, actually rolled them like a teenager being told to clean her room. Sure. The businessman had moved closer. He was a heavy-set man in his 50s, wearing a rumpled suit and carrying a laptop bag. His expression was troubled, angry, the look of someone who'd seen enough. "Excuse me," he said. His voice cut through the tension like a blade. I couldn't help overhearing. Crystal turned to him with a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. Can I help you, sir? I think you should look at this gentleman's documentation. Sir, this is between me and the guest. No, I think it concerns all of us. What you're doing here is discrimination. Crystal's smile vanished. I'm following motel policy. Your motel policy doesn't override federal law. I appreciate your concern, but I know how to do my job. The businessman looked at Garrett. You okay, soldier? Garrett nodded slowly. Yeah, thanks. I'm Wade Thornton. I'm in the hospitality industry myself. What she's doing? He shook his head. This isn't right. Crystal's face had gone red again. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step back. This doesn't involve you. I'm making it involve me. Atlas's ears perked up. The dog had noticed something in Wade's tone, or maybe in Garrett's reaction to having an unexpected ally. Something had shifted in the room's dynamics, subtle but significant. Garrett felt something he hadn't expected. Gratitude. And underneath it, shame. He'd spent so many years being self-reliant, handling everything on his own, never asking for help because asking meant weakness, and weakness meant death. Having a stranger step in to defend him felt strange, foreign, but also good, like maybe he didn't have to fight every battle alone. Look, Garrett said, trying one more time. Exhaustion was pulling at him now, heavy and insistent. I don't want trouble. I just want to check into my room. I've been driving for 14 hours. I'm exhausted. My brother's getting married this weekend, and I can't miss it. Can we please just resolve this? Crystal's expression hardened, not softening, not yielding, just closing down completely. I've already told you, pay the fee or leave. And I've told you the fee is illegal. Then sue us. The words hung in the air, cold, final, challenge and dismissal wrapped together. Wade Thornton shook his head slowly. Ma'am, you might want to reconsider that response. Excuse me. I'm saying you might want to think very carefully about what you're doing right now, because I promise you this is not going to end the way you think it will. Crystal laughed. It was an ugly sound, sharp and bitter. Are you threatening me too? No, ma'am, I'm just telling you the truth. He pulled out his phone and stepped away, already dialing. Crystal watched him go with a sneer on her face. Whatever. Call whoever you want. I'm not scared of some random guest. Garrett said nothing. He was watching Wade, watching the way the older man's expression changed as someone answered his call. Professional, serious, connected. Hey, it's Wade, the businessman said. His voice was low, but Garrett caught fragments. Yeah, I know what time it is. Listen, I need you to do something for me. I'm at the Northwoods Inn in Whitefish, Montana. There's a situation here you need to know about. His voice dropped lower, too quiet to hear. But whatever he was saying, whoever he was talking to, it was changing the energy in the room. Crystal had gone back to typing on her computer, but her movements were jerky now, uncertain. The elderly couple had started recording on their phones, not even trying to hide it. Atlas remained steady at Garrett's side, doing his job even though the job was never ending, even though Garrett's brain kept betraying him, kept pulling him back to places and times that should have stayed buried. Garrett looked down at his dog, at the service vest that clearly identified Atlas as legitimate, at the documentation folder still sitting unopened on the counter. He'd done everything right, followed every rule, prepared for every contingency, and none of it mattered to someone who had already decided he was a fraud. You know, Garrett said quietly, I used to think the hardest part of coming home was the nightmares, the panic attacks, the way every loud noise makes me want to dive for cover. But it's not. The hardest part is this, having to prove over and over again that my wounds are real just because you can't see them. Crystal didn't respond. She was printing something on the receipt paper, the machine making small mechanical sounds. 4 tours in combat zones, Garrett continued. His voice was steady now, past anger, past frustration, settling into something colder and more permanent. I've been shot at more times than I can count. Watched friends die in my arms. Carried pieces of them home in body bags. And you're telling me I don't look disabled enough? Sir, I've heard every story in the book. This isn't a story. It's my life. Crystal slid a new receipt across the counter. Your room is ready. Total comes to $612 with the pet fee. Will that be on the card you provided? Garrett stared at the paper. $612. Almost double what he'd expected to pay. Almost double what he could afford. The number sat there like an accusation. I'm not paying that. Then you're not staying here. I have a reservation. Reservations can be canceled. You can't cancel my reservation because I won't pay an illegal fee. Crystal smiled. It was cold, empty, the kind of smile that had no warmth behind it. Watch me. She started typing again. Actually canceling his reservation, actually following through on the threat. Garrett's hands were shaking. Not from anger this time. From the effort of staying calm. From not saying something he'd regret. From not giving her any excuse to call security and have him removed. Atlas whined softly, low worried the sound he made when he could feel everything Garrett was feeling and didn't know how to fix it. Ma'am, Garrett said, his voice was barely above a whisper now. I'm asking you, please, look at my documentation. Call your manager. Do whatever you need to do. But please don't make me spend another night driving around looking for somewhere to sleep. For just a moment, something flickered in Crystal's eyes. Something that might have been doubt, uncertainty, the first crack in her conviction. Then it was gone. I already told you. The night manager went home. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing you're willing to do. Call it whatever you want. Wade Thornton was walking back toward the desk. His phone was still in his hand, but he wasn't talking anymore. His expression had changed. He looked almost satisfied. Like someone who'd just played a winning card. Hey, Wade said to Garrett, you might want to stick around for the next few minutes. Crystal glanced at him dismissively. Sir, I thought I asked you to step back. You did. I ignored you. I can have you removed from the property. You can try. There was something in his voice that made Crystal pause. Confidence. Authority. The kind of tone that came from power, from connections, from knowing exactly how the next few minutes were going to unfold. Garrett looked at Wade. What's going on? Made a phone call. Friend of mine works in corporate compliance for a major hotel chain. He knows people at Northwoods Corporate. Made some calls of his own. Crystal's face went pale. Actually lost color, like blood draining away. What? Your corporate headquarters is aware of this situation now. Legal department, too. Should be hearing from them any minute. You're bluffing. Wade shrugged. Guess we'll find out. The lobby went quiet. Complete silence except for the hum of the vending machine and the soft whisper of snow against windows. Even the elderly couple had stopped whispering. Everyone was waiting. Seconds ticked by. Then a minute. Crystal had stopped typing. She was staring at the phone on her desk like it might explode. Her hands were shaking, now small tremors she couldn't hide. This is ridiculous, she said. Her voice had lost its certainty. Corporate doesn't call in the middle of the night over some guest complaint. They do when it involves federal law violations, Wade said calmly. I haven't violated anything. Ma'am, with respect, you violated several sections of the Americans with Disabilities Act in the last 20 minutes alone. All of it recorded. All of it witnessed. The phone rang. The sound was sharp, sudden, cutting through the tension like a gunshot. Everyone in the lobby turned to look at the front desk. Crystal stared at the phone. It rang again and again. You might want to answer that, Wade said quietly. Crystal reached for the receiver. Her hand was trembling badly now, barely able to grip the plastic. Northwood's in front desk. This is Crystal speaking. Garrett watched her face as she listened to whoever was on the other end. First confusion, then disbelief, then something that looked a lot like fear. Raw, undeniable fear. Yes, sir, she said. I understand, but I was just... She stopped, listened. Yes, sir. More listening. Her face had gone white. Completely, absolutely white. I understand. Another pause. Yes, sir. Right away. Yes. She hung up the phone very slowly, like her hands had forgotten how to work. For a long moment, she didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, staring at nothing. Processing, realizing, understanding exactly how badly she'd miscalculated. Atlas moved closer to Garrett. The dog's tail gave a single wag. Relief, resolution. Something good was coming. Ma'am, Garrett said, everything okay? Crystal looked at him. Her earlier hostility was gone. In its place was something that looked like terror. Pure, unfiltered terror. I'm sorry, sir, she said. Her voice was shaking. I need you to know that all pet fees have been removed from your account. You've been upgraded to our presidential suite at no additional charge. The general manager will be here within the hour to personally apologize. And she swallowed hard, I need to ask you to please accept my apology for any misunderstanding. Garrett didn't respond immediately. He wasn't sure what to say. The words hung in the air between them, apology and fear, mixing into something uncomfortable to witness. Crystal's hands were shaking as she typed something into the computer. her earlier confidence completely shattered. Wade Thornton smiled grimly from across the lobby. That's more like it. Your new room keys are being programmed now, Crystal said, her voice barely audible. Is there anything else I can do to make your stay more comfortable? Complimentary breakfast, late checkout, anything at all. What just happened? Garrett asked. That was corporate headquarters, the legal compliance department. She couldn't meet his eyes. They said what I was doing was a federal crime, that the motel could be fined, that I could be personally liable. I tried to tell you that. I know, I'm sorry, I didn't. She started again. I didn't understand. I thought you were lying. Garrett nodded slowly. The adrenaline was draining out of him now, leaving behind exhaustion so deep it felt like drowning. I know. Crystal's expression crumpled. Tears were forming in her eyes, though she was fighting them back. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Atlas's tail wagged slightly. The dog could sense the change in the room, the reduction in tension, the crisis passing. Not resolution exactly, but de-escalation. The immediate threat was over. Garrett looked at his dog, his partner, his lifeline. This is Atlas, he said quietly. He's been with me for 2 years. He knows when I'm going to have a panic attack before I do. He wakes me up from nightmares. He helps me function in a world that doesn't always understand what I've been through. Crystal nodded, wiping her eyes. I'm sorry, she said again. I didn't know. That's the point. You didn't know, and instead of finding out, you assumed the worst. I know, I'm so sorry. Garrett took a deep breath, then another. The techniques were working now that the fight was over, now that his body understood there was no more threat to prepare for. Okay, he said finally. Okay, I accept your apology. Crystal looked surprised. You do? Yeah, everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what you do after. Thank you. I promise I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to do better. I hope so, for the next veteran who walks through those doors. Wade stepped forward. If I may suggest, ma'am, you might want to look into some ADA training. There are programs available. Might help you understand what you're dealing with. Crystal nodded eagerly. I will. I'll talk to my manager about it, I promise. The phone rang again. Crystal answered immediately, her voice overly professional, now compensating. Yes, sir. Yes, he's still here. Yes, I've apologized. Yes, I've upgraded his room. Yes, I understand. She looked at Garrett. The general manager is on his way. He wants to apologize in person. That's not necessary. He insists. Garrett sighed. All he wanted was to get to his room and sleep, to close the door and shut out the world and let Atlas curl up beside him and pretend for a few hours that everything was normal. But something told him this night wasn't over yet. Fine, he said. I'll wait. He found a chair in the lobby and sat down heavily. Every muscle in his body ached, that deep, bone-tired exhaustion that came from holding tension for too long. Atlas immediately settled at his feet, head resting on Garrett's boots. The dog's breathing was steady, calm, a metronome of normalcy in the chaos. Wade took the chair next to him. Long night. You could say that. That was a good thing you did, standing up for yourself. Garrett shook his head. I didn't do anything. You made the phone call. You held your ground. That's what mattered. Wade was quiet for a moment. My brother was Army, 2 tours in Desert Storm, came back different. Took him years to get help. Back then, they didn't even have a name for what he was going through. I'm sorry. He's okay now, mostly. But I remember what it was like, the anger, the nightmares, the way people treated him, like he was broken. Garrett nodded slowly. It's hard, feeling like you have to prove yourself all the time, like your wounds don't count because people can't see them. They count, they all count. Atlas lifted his head and looked at Wade. The dog's eyes were calm, assessing. Wade reached out slowly, then stopped. Can I? He's working right now. Better not to distract him. Of course, sorry. No worries, most people don't know. They sat in silence for a while. The elderly couple had left. The lobby was quiet except for the hum of machines and the occasional click of Crystal's keyboard. She was working frantically now, probably documenting everything, probably terrified of making another mistake. Garrett closed his eyes. His body was screaming for sleep, but his mind was still racing, replaying the confrontation, analyzing every word, every gesture, every moment of conflict. Old habits, the kind that kept you alive in war zones but made it impossible to relax anywhere else. Atlas shifted, pressing his warm body more firmly against Garrett's legs. The dog's weight was grounding. Real. Present. A physical reminder that this moment right now was safe. No IEDs hidden in the furniture, no snipers on the rooftops, no ambush waiting around corners, just a motel lobby in Montana and a dog who refused to let him spiral. Garrett focused on that feeling, the warmth, the pressure, the steady rhythm of Atlas's breathing. Slowly, his racing thoughts began to quiet. The front doors opened, and a man in his 50s rushed in, still wearing sweatpants and a hastily thrown-on polo shirt. His hair was disheveled like he'd just rolled out of bed, which Garrett realized he probably had. The motel logo was embroidered on his shirt. Management. Mr. Sullivan. The man hurried over, hand extended. I'm Lawrence Bradshaw, general manager. I am so incredibly sorry for what happened here tonight. Garrett stood and shook his hand. Mr. Bradshaw, please call me Lawrence, and please accept my deepest apologies. What Crystal did was completely unacceptable. It violated not only motel policy but federal law. I want you to know that she will be receiving immediate retraining and this incident will be thoroughly investigated. I appreciate that. I also want you to know that your entire stay is on us. 3 nights, presidential suite, all meals, anything you need. It's the least we can do. Garrett shook his head. That's not necessary. I just wanted, please, I insist. What you experienced tonight should never have happened. I want to make it right. Lawrence's expression was earnest, genuinely apologetic. Garrett could see the man was mortified by what had occurred. Not just worried about lawsuits or bad publicity, but actually upset that a guest had been treated this way. Okay, Garrett said finally. Thank you. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for your service. Lawrence glanced at Garrett's left hand at the faint tan line where a wedding ring used to be, at the scars visible on his forearms. My father was a Marine, Korea. He never talked about what he saw over there, but I know it stayed with him. I have nothing but respect for what you've done for this country. Garrett nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Gratitude always hit harder than hostility. He could handle anger, confrontation, threats. Kindness was somehow more difficult to process. Lawrence handed him a business card. This is my direct line. If you ever stay at any Northwoods property anywhere in the country, you call me first. I'll make sure you're taken care of. I appreciate that. And Mr. Sullivan, I'm going to make sure this never happens again. Not at this motel, not at any of our motels. What happened to you tonight is going to change how we train our staff, how we handle service, animal accommodations, everything. Garrett looked at him. You mean that? I give you my word. They shook hands again. Lawrence turned to Wade. And thank you, sir, for making that call. I understand you're the one who alerted corporate. Wade shrugged. Just did what was right. Well, your room is comp too. Least we can do. Wade looked surprised. That's not necessary. I insist. Garrett felt Atlas shift beside him. The dog's tail was wagging slowly. He could sense the change in energy, the resolution of conflict, the restoration of something that had been broken. It was almost 1 a.m. Garrett had a wedding to attend in 2 days. His brother didn't know how close he'd come to missing it. Tyler was probably asleep right now, peaceful, unaware of the battle that had just been fought in a motel lobby 200 miles away. I should get some sleep, Garrett said. Of course. Lawrence handed him a new set of key cards. Presidential suite, top floor. Best view in the motel. Anything you need, anything at all, you call the front desk and ask for me directly. Thank you. Garrett gathered his duffel bag and headed for the elevator. Atlas walked beside him, matching his pace perfectly, the way he always did. At the elevator, Garrett paused and looked back at the lobby. Crystal was still at the front desk, but she was no longer typing. She was just sitting there staring at nothing, looking shell-shocked. Lawrence was talking to her quietly, his expression serious but not unkind. Wade was heading out the front door, giving Garrett a small wave as he left. The businessman who had stepped in when he didn't have to, who had made the call that changed everything, who had reminded Garrett that not everyone assumed the worst. The lobby that had felt so hostile 30 minutes ago now felt almost peaceful. Garrett pressed the elevator button. The dog looked up at him with those calm, steady eyes. A look that said, yeah, but we got through it, like we always do. The elevator doors opened. Garrett stepped inside. Tomorrow he would call Tyler and tell him he'd arrived safely. He would not mention the confrontation, the panic attack, the federal law violations. Some things were better left unsaid. But as the elevator carried him upward, Garrett made himself a promise. The next veteran who walked into this motel with a service dog would not face what he had faced tonight. He had made sure of that. The elevator doors opened on the top floor. Garrett stepped out and into a quiet hallway. Atlas walked beside him, a steady presence in the darkness. And somewhere 200 miles away, Tyler was sleeping peacefully, unaware of how close everything had come to falling apart. The presidential suite was bigger than Garrett's entire apartment back in Virginia. Atlas did his usual sweep the moment they walked in, sniffing corners, checking behind furniture, investigating the bathroom. Old habits for both of them. The dog wouldn't settle until he was satisfied the space was secure. Garrett dropped his duffel bag on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed. His hands were still shaking. Not from the confrontation anymore, from the aftermath. The adrenaline crash that always came after his system went into overdrive. The price his body paid for functioning in situations that triggered every survival instinct he'd developed over 8 years in combat. He looked at his phone. 3 missed calls from Tyler. 2 texts. "You close yet? Let me know when you get in. Mom's asking." Garrett typed a quick response. "Just checked in. Long drive. Talk tomorrow." 3 dots appeared immediately. Tyler was still awake. "Everything okay?" Garrett hesitated. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. "Yeah, fine. Just tired." "Okay, get some sleep. Big weekend ahead. Will do." Garrett set the phone on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling. Big weekend ahead. His little brother was getting married. Tyler, who used to follow him around like a puppy when they were kids. Tyler, who cried for a week when Garrett left for basic training. Tyler, who had somehow grown into a man while Garrett was overseas fighting wars that most Americans had forgotten about. Atlas jumped onto the bed and lay down beside him. Technically against the rules, but Garrett didn't care. Not tonight. He put his hand on the dog's side and felt the steady rhythm of breathing. Real, warm, present. "We got through it, buddy," Garrett said quietly. Atlas's tail thumped once against the mattress. Garrett closed his eyes. He didn't expect to sleep. He never expected to sleep. But exhaustion pulled him under before he could fight it. The dream started the way it always did. Fallujah. August, heat so intense it felt like breathing fire. Garrett was on point, moving through a narrow alley with his team behind him. 4 men, his brothers, his responsibility. The walls on either side were pockmarked with bullet holes from previous firefights. Trash lined the gutters. Somewhere in the distance, a dog was barking. "Ghost, hold up." That was Martinez, always cautious, always watching Garrett's back. Garrett raised his fist, and the team froze. Something wasn't right. The alley was too quiet. The dog had stopped barking. "I don't like this," Peterson whispered. "Neither do I." Garrett scanned the rooftops, the windows, the shadows. Nothing moved. "Let's pull back. Find another route. Well, Command wants us at the objective in 15 minutes. "Command isn't here." Garrett started to turn around. That's when the world exploded. The IED had been buried under a pile of garbage 10 feet ahead. Garrett never saw it, never sensed it, never had a chance to warn anyone. The blast lifted him off his feet and threw him against a wall. His ears were ringing. His vision was blurred. He could taste blood. And then he heard the screaming. Martinez was down. Peterson was down. Williams was trying to drag himself toward cover with both legs shattered below the knee. Blood everywhere, so much blood that the sand couldn't absorb it fast enough. Garrett crawled toward them. His own body was broken in ways he couldn't feel yet, the adrenaline masking the damage. "Hold on," he kept saying. "Hold on, I've got you." But he didn't have them. He couldn't save them. He could only watch as the light faded from Martinez's eyes, as Peterson stopped breathing, as Williams whispered his daughter's name with his last breath. 3 men gone in 90 seconds because Garrett had missed something. Because he had failed. Garrett woke up gasping, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. Atlas was already there, pressing against his chest, licking his face, making small, whining sounds that said, "I'm here, you're safe, come back to me." Garrett grabbed the dog and held on. "I'm okay," he whispered. "I'm okay, I'm okay." He wasn't okay, he was never okay, but saying the words helped sometimes. Made them feel almost true. The clock on the nightstand said 4:47. He'd slept for less than 4 hours. It was enough. It would have to be enough. Garrett got up and went to the bathroom. He splashed cold water on his face and looked at himself in the mirror. 39 years old. He looked 50. The face staring back at him had deep lines around the eyes, a permanent tension in the jaw, a gaze that seemed to look through things rather than at them. The face of a man who had seen too much and couldn't unsee any of it. "Get it together, Sullivan," he told his reflection. "You've got a wedding to survive." Atlas appeared in the bathroom doorway, watching him with those calm, knowing eyes. Yeah, one day at a time." The dog's tail wagged. Garrett showered, shaved, and put on civilian clothes for the first time in days. Jeans and a button-down shirt. He felt naked without his uniform exposed. But this weekend wasn't about him. It was about Tyler, about family, about showing up even when every instinct screamed to stay hidden. He checked his phone, a text from his mother. Breakfast at the venue at 9. Don't be late, Garrett. I mean it. He smiled despite himself. Some things never changed. Catherine Sullivan had been telling him not to be late since he was 5 years old, and she still didn't trust him to show up on time. Come on, Atlas. Let's go find some food. The motel restaurant was nearly empty at 6 in the morning. A few business travelers hunched over laptops. An elderly couple sharing a newspaper. A young family with a toddler who kept throwing Cheerios on the floor. Garrett chose a table in the corner where he could see all the exits. Old habits. Atlas squeezed into the space at his feet. A waitress approached. Young, maybe college-aged, with a bright smile that seemed genuine. Good morning. Just you today? Just me and my dog. She glanced under the table and her smile widened. Oh, he's beautiful. Is he a service dog? Garrett tensed automatically, waiting for the questions, the skepticism, the demand for documentation. But the waitress just kept smiling. Yes, he is. That's wonderful. My cousin has a service dog for her diabetes. Saved her life twice already. She pulled out her notepad. What can I get you? Garrett felt something loosen in his chest. Not everyone was like Crystal. Not everyone assumed the worst. Coffee, black, and whatever you recommend for breakfast. The Western omelet is amazing. Best in the city if you ask me. Sold. She disappeared toward the kitchen. Garrett let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Atlas's tail thumped against his foot. The dog could sense the relief, the small victory of a normal interaction. The coffee arrived first hot and strong. Garrett wrapped his hands around the mug and let the warmth seep into his fingers. His phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Sullivan, this is Lawrence from Northwoods. I wanted to follow up on last night and make sure your accommodations are satisfactory. Please let me know if there's anything else I can do. Garrett typed back a quick thank you and set the phone aside. Then another text came through. This one from Wade Thornton. Hey, Garrett got your number from the motel. Hope that's okay. Just wanted to check in and make sure you're doing all right. Garrett stared at the message. A stranger checking on him, making sure he was okay. When was the last time anyone outside his immediate family had done that? Doing fine, he typed back. Thanks again for your help. No thanks necessary. I meant what I said. My brother was Army. I know what you guys go through. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. Garrett didn't know what to say to that. He settled for a simple thumbs up emoji and put the phone away. The omelet arrived and the waitress was right. It was amazing. Garrett ate mechanically, not really tasting the food but forcing himself to finish. He'd learned in the SEALs that you ate when you could, whether you were hungry or not. You never knew when your next meal might come. Old habits. The ones that kept you alive but made civilian life feel foreign. By 8, he was back in his room changing into something more appropriate for a wedding venue breakfast. Atlas watched from the bed, head tilted slightly. Don't give me that look. I know I'm overthinking this. The dog's tail wagged. Fine, let's go see the family. The wedding venue was 20 minutes from the motel, a sprawling ranch property that Tyler and Rachel had fallen in love with at first sight. Garrett pulled into the parking lot and sat in his truck for a moment, gathering himself. He hadn't seen his family in 8 months. Not since Christmas, and that visit had been cut short when a panic attack sent him fleeing to his hotel room before dessert was served. His mother had cried. Tyler had tried to understand but couldn't hide his disappointment. Garrett had driven back to Virginia the next morning and hadn't visited since. Atlas whined softly. Yeah, I know. Can't hide in the truck forever. He got out. The morning air was cold, but the sun was breaking through clouds, turning everything golden. Atlas trotted beside him toward the main building, ears forward alert but calm. His mother spotted him first. Catherine Sullivan was 62 years old and looked exactly the same as she had when Garrett left for basic training at 18. Same silver-streaked hair, same sharp blue eyes, same expression that could shift from loving to disapproving in a heartbeat. Garrett, she rushed toward him, arms outstretched, and pulled him into a hug that squeezed the air from his lungs. Mom, can't breathe. Good, maybe it'll knock some sense into you. She pulled back and held his face in her hands, examining him like she was looking for damage. You look tired. Long drive. You should have flown. You know I don't fly anymore. Her expression softened. She did know. She knew everything, even the things he'd never told her. Mothers always did. Well, you're here now. That's what matters. She looked down at Atlas. And who's this handsome fellow? This is Atlas, my service dog. I remember from the pictures. She crouched down and held out her hand for Atlas to sniff. Hello, Atlas. Thank you for taking care of my boy. The dog's tail wagged enthusiastically. Garrett felt a lump forming in his throat. Mom, don't apologize. Don't explain. Just be here. That's all I ask. I'm here. Good. She stood up and brushed invisible lint off his shirt. Now come inside. Your brothers have been driving everyone crazy asking when you'd arrive. The main building was chaos, caterers setting up, florists arguing about centerpieces, a woman with a clipboard barking orders at everyone who crossed her path. In the middle of it all stood Tyler Sullivan, 28 years old, dark hair like their father, Mom's blue eyes, the kind of easy smile that made everyone around him feel comfortable. He looked up and saw Garrett. Hey, you made it. Tyler crossed the room in 5 long strides and wrapped Garrett in a bear hug. Strong, real. The kind of hug that said everything words couldn't. Of course I made it, Garrett said. Wouldn't miss it. I was starting to worry. You didn't answer your phone last night. Long drive. Got in late. Everything okay? Tyler pulled back and looked at him with an expression that was too knowing for Garrett's comfort. His little brother had grown up while he was away, learned to read people, learned to see through the masks that Garrett wore so carefully. We'll talk later, Tyler said quietly. There's nothing to talk about. There's always something to talk about with you, but not now. Tyler's smile returned. Now you need to meet Rachel. She's been dying to finally meet the famous brother I never shut up about. Rachel Moore was not what Garrett expected. He'd seen pictures, of course. Pretty dark-haired, warm smile. But pictures didn't capture the energy that radiated from her, the way she seemed to light up whatever space she occupied. She approached Garrett with her hand extended. Garrett, finally, Tyler talks about you constantly. All lies, I'm sure. Mostly good things. Her eyes sparkled with humor. He says you're the reason he learned to fight. Something about defending him from bullies in middle school. Garrett glanced at Tyler. You told her about that. I told her everything. No secrets between us. Rachel looked down at Atlas. And this must be Atlas. Tyler told me about him too. He's beautiful. Thanks, he's been a good partner. I bet. Rachel's expression shifted to something more serious. Tyler told me what he does for you. I think it's wonderful that you have that support. Garrett didn't know what to say. People usually didn't acknowledge Atlas's role so directly. They danced around it, pretended not to notice, changed the subject. Rachel's directness was refreshing and uncomfortable at the same time. Thank you, he managed. No need to thank me. I'm just glad you're here. It means everything to Tyler. She squeezed his arm and moved away to deal with some crisis involving table linens. Tyler was watching him with that knowing expression again. What? Garrett asked. Nothing, just glad you're here. You keep saying that. Because I keep meaning it. The morning passed in a blur of introductions and preparations. Garrett met Rachel's parents and sister. He met Tyler's groomsmen, 3 guys from college who seemed intimidated by Garrett's military background and overcompensated by being aggressively friendly. Atlas stayed close throughout, a steady presence at Garrett's side. The dog was working hard. Reading the room, monitoring stress levels, positioning himself to provide maximum support. By noon, Garrett was exhausted. He found a quiet corner and sat down. Atlas immediately settled at his feet. His mother found him there. Taking a break. Yeah, I needed air. She sat down beside him. You're doing good, Garrett. I know this is hard. It's fine. It's not fine. It's never fine. But you're doing it anyway. And that's what matters. Garrett looked at his mother, at the worry lines around her eyes, at the gray in her hair that hadn't been there before he deployed, at the way she still looked at him like he was her little boy, even though that boy had died somewhere in the desert and come back as someone else. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For Christmas, for leaving early, for not being there. Garrett, Catherine's voice was firm. Stop. Mom, I said stop. She took his hand. You think you need to apologize for having PTSD? For struggling? For doing the best you can with what you've got? I should be better. You should be kinder to yourself. She squeezed his hand. Do you know what I remember most about the day you left for basic training? Garrett shook his head. You were 18 years old, barely. You just graduated high school 2 months earlier. Your father had died the year before, and we were still trying to figure out how to pay the bills. And there you were, heading off to become a soldier so you could send money home to help. Someone had to. No, someone didn't have to. You chose to. You chose to carry a burden that wasn't yours to carry. You've been doing it ever since. That's my job. No, baby. That's your trauma. She took his other hand, now holding both, forcing him to look at her. You think you have to save everyone, protect everyone, Be strong for everyone, but you don't. You're allowed to need help too. Garrett felt his eyes burning. I don't know how to do that. I know, that's why you have Atlas. That's why you have us. You don't have to figure it out alone. Atlas lifted his head and looked at Garrett. His mother squeezed his hands, and for just a moment, sitting in a corner of a wedding venue in Montana, Garrett felt something he hadn't felt in years. Safe. Now come on, Catherine said, standing up and pulling him with her. Your brother wants to do a toast at lunch, and he specifically asked for you to be there. I can't. He's not asking you to speak, just to be there. Can you do that? Garrett looked at Atlas. The dog's tail wagged once. Yeah, Garrett said. I can do that. The lunch toast was simple. Tyler stood up at the head table, raised his glass, and looked around at his family, his friends, his fiancée. Sunlight poured through the ranch windows, turning everything gold. Garrett sat at the edge of the family table, Atlas lying quietly at his feet, trying to make himself invisible. I want to thank everyone for being here, Tyler began. His voice was steady, but emotion threaded through every word. This weekend means everything to Rachel and me, but I especially want to thank my brother Garrett. Garrett felt every eye in the room turn toward him. 50 people, maybe more, all watching, all waiting. His chest tightened. Atlas pressed harder against his leg. Breathe, stay present. Garrett couldn't make it to a lot of family events over the years, Tyler continued. He was busy keeping our country safe, missing birthdays, holidays, all the stuff most people take for granted. He sacrificed more than any of us will ever know. Tyler's voice wavered slightly. Garrett stared at his plate, unable to look up, unable to meet anyone's eyes. But he's here now. He drove 14 hours to be here, and that means more to me than I can ever say. Tyler raised his glass higher. So this toast is for Garrett, for showing up, for always showing up even when it's hard. I love you, brother. Everyone raised their glasses. To Garrett, the room echoed. Garrett raised his too, though his hand was shaking. Under the table, Atlas's steady weight was the only thing keeping him anchored. The afternoon brought more preparations, more moments that tested Garrett's limits. Photo sessions where every flash felt like muzzle fire. Conversations that required more energy than he had to give. By 6 o'clock, he was done, completely drained. Every social interaction had cost him something, and the bill was coming due. I need to head back to the motel, he told Tyler. Get some rest before tomorrow. You sure we were going to do dinner? I'm sure, big day tomorrow. Yeah. Tyler looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, get some rest. The drive back to the motel was quiet. Atlas sat in the passenger seat, watching the scenery pass by. Garrett's mind was racing. The toast, his mother's words, the weight of expectations, the fear of letting everyone down, all of it swirling together into a pressure that made it hard to breathe. He pulled into the motel parking lot and sat there for a moment. His phone buzzed. A text from Crystal. Mr. Sullivan, I know I don't have the right to contact you, but I wanted to apologize properly. What I did last night was wrong. Learning ADA compliance today. Thank you for the lesson. Garrett stared at the message. He thought about deleting it, about ignoring it. Instead, he typed back, good. Pass it forward. 3 dots appeared. Then I will. I promise. Garrett put the phone away. Atlas whined softly. Yeah, buddy. Time for dinner. They walked into the motel lobby together. Lawrence was there talking to a staff member. He looked up and smiled when he saw Garrett. Mr. Sullivan, how was your day? It was good, thank you. Excellent. I wanted to let you know that I've already begun implementing new training protocols for our staff. What happened to you will never happen again at this motel. I appreciate that. It's the least we can do. Garrett headed for the elevator. Behind him, Atlas walked steadily at his side. Tomorrow would bring more challenges. The wedding, the crowds, the emotions. But tonight, Garrett had something he hadn't had in a long time. Hope. Not the bright, shining kind, but the quiet, persistent kind. The kind that whispered maybe things were starting to change. The elevator doors opened. Garrett stepped inside. Atlas followed. And somewhere in the lobby, Lawrence picked up the phone to begin the process that would eventually transform how the entire Northwoods chain treated veterans and their service animals. But Garrett didn't know that yet. All he knew was that he was tired, his dog was hungry, and tomorrow his little brother was getting married. One day at a time. That was all anyone could do. 6 months later, Garrett woke at 5 in the morning to find Atlas staring at him from the foot of the bed, tail wagging slowly. No nightmares, no panic. For the first time in weeks, Garrett had slept through the night without waking up in Fallujah, without Martinez's blood on his hands, without Peterson's last breath rattling in his ears. He'd slept, actually slept. The apartment was still dark, but sunrise was coming. Garrett could see it through the window, pink and gold, spreading across the Montana sky. His apartment, in Montana. 3 blocks from Tyler's house. 6 months since the wedding, and he was still getting used to the idea that this was home now. He got out of bed and padded to the kitchen. Atlas followed nails clicking on hardwood. The coffee maker was already programmed, one of those automatic things Rachel had insisted he needed. The smell filled the small space, rich and dark and normal. Normal. That was the word that kept surprising him. 6 months in Montana and things felt almost normal. Not fixed, not healed, but manageable, survivable, sometimes even good. His phone buzzed on the counter, a text from Tyler. Bringing William over in an hour. Rachel has a doctor's appointment. That cool Garrett smiled and typed back, "Yeah, we'll be here." William, his nephew, 3 months old and already the center of everyone's universe. Tyler and Rachel had asked Garrett to be godfather at the hospital, both of them exhausted and glowing, holding this tiny human they'd created. Garrett had held his nephew for the first time and felt something crack open in his chest. Not breaking, opening, letting something new in. Atlas barked once. Sharp, urgent. His therapy appointment bark. The one that meant you're going to be late if you don't move. Yeah, I know. Garrett showered, dressed, grabbed his keys. Atlas was already at the door, vest on, ready to work. They drove to the VA clinic on the east side of town. Garrett had been seeing Dr. Patricia Hayes for 6 months now. Twice a week at first, then once a week, now every other week. Progress measured in gradually lengthening intervals. The clinic was quiet this early. A few other veterans in the waiting room, most of them looking as uncomfortable as Garrett felt. Therapy wasn't something they talked about in the teams. You handled your problems. You didn't sit in offices talking about your feelings. Except Garrett had learned the hard way that not talking about it didn't make it go away. Dr. Hayes was in her early 50s, gray-haired, calm in a way that felt earned rather than performed. She gestured Garrett into her office. Atlas followed immediately, settling at Garrett's feet. "Nightmares?" she asked. "Better, less frequent." "What changed?" Garrett considered. "Family, purpose, maybe just time. Or you're learning you deserve to heal." Garrett didn't respond. Deserving was still a foreign concept. His phone buzzed, unknown number. Dr. Hayes nodded permission. Garrett checked the message, then checked it again. "Mr. Sullivan, this is Janet Morrison from Congressman Blake Harrison's office. The congressman would like to invite you to testify before the House Veterans Affairs Committee regarding service animal accommodations in the Americans with Disabilities Act. We believe your testimony would be valuable. Please call at your earliest convenience." Garrett stared at the screen. "Everything okay?" Dr. Hayes asked. "I don't know." He showed her the message. She read it, eyebrows rising. "Garrett, that's incredible. That's terrifying. Same thing sometimes. They want me to testify before Congress. On television." His breathing was speeding up. Atlas pressed harder against his leg. "What are you feeling?" Garrett closed his eyes. "Scared, angry that I have to be scared, exhausted at the thought of fighting this battle again. And underneath all that," he opened his eyes. "I want to do it. I want to stand up there and tell them what happened. Change things so no one else has to go through what I went through." "Then that's your answer." "But what if I can't? What if I freeze? What if I have a panic attack in front of everyone? What if you do? What if you stand up there terrified and shaking and tell the truth anyway? What if that's exactly what makes people listen?" Garrett sat with that. Atlas shifted, moving to rest his head on Garrett's knee. Heavy, warm, real. "I need to think about it," Garrett said. "Take all the time you need, but Garrett, I think you already know what you're going to do." After the appointment, Garrett drove to Tyler's house. His brother was waiting on the porch, holding William in one arm, a diaper bag slung over the other shoulder. "Thanks for doing this," Tyler said, transferring the baby carefully. "Rachel's nervous about the appointment. First trimester and everything." "Wait, what?" Tyler grinned. "Surprise. Baby number 2, 8 weeks. We were going to tell everyone at Sunday dinner, but, well, your family." Garrett held his nephew and felt that crack in his chest widen a little more. "Congratulations." "Thanks. You okay?" "You look stressed." "I'm fine. Go. Rachel's waiting." Tyler hesitated, then nodded and jogged to his truck. Garrett carried William inside. Atlas followed, moving carefully around, the baby protective instincts fully engaged. Garrett settled on the couch. The baby was making small cooing sounds, fingers grasping at air. "Your dad asked me to be your godfather," Garrett said quietly. "I said yes, even though I'm pretty sure I'm going to mess it up somehow. But I'm going to try." That's the best I can offer. William yawned, unimpressed. His phone buzzed. Tyler, did you call them yet? What, the congressman's office? Mom called me. She somehow already knows. Garrett stared at the message. Of course she knew. Catherine Sullivan had an uncanny ability to know everything before anyone told her. Not yet. You're going to do it, though. I don't know. Yes, you do. Garrett looked down at William. The baby had fallen asleep, small chest rising and falling with perfect trust. Atlas was watching both of them, calm and alert. Yeah, Garrett typed. I'm going to do it. The 6 weeks before the testimony became a blur. Speech coach sessions, practicing in the mirror. Atlas watching tail-wagging encouragement. The text came steady. Support from people Garrett barely knew. Crystal, you're going to be amazing. Wade watching from Chicago. Go get them, brother. Lawrence, we're proud of you, Mr. Sullivan. Catherine, your father would be so proud. I'll be there, Tyler. You're speaking for everyone who can't. The night before the testimony, Garrett sat on his apartment balcony. Atlas warm and solid beside him. Stars overhead. Big day tomorrow, buddy. Atlas's tail thumped once. Yeah, me neither. Garrett closed his eyes. The prayer came without planning. God, if you're listening, help me find the words. Atlas licked his hand. The hearing room was everything Garrett had feared. Wood-paneled walls, elevated committee platform, television cameras, gallery packed with spectators. Garrett walked down the center aisle, Atlas beside him. Every eye tracked their movement. His dress uniform felt too tight. Atlas pressed closer, offering pressure and presence. Catherine sat in the front row. Next to her, impossibly, sat Wade Thornton. Behind them, Lawrence and several Northwoods executives. Crystal was watching a live stream from Montana. Tyler and Rachel from their living room with William. Garrett reached the witness table. His hands were shaking as he pulled out the chair. Atlas settled at his feet. Grounding, present, real. The committee chairman, Senator Blake Harrison, looked down at Garrett. Lieutenant Commander Garrett Sullivan, United States Navy, retired. Thank you for being here today. You may begin your testimony when ready. Garrett looked at the microphone, at the cameras, at the faces watching. His prepared notes sat on the table, but suddenly they seemed wrong. Too polished. Not true. He pushed the papers aside. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. His voice was steady, clearer than he'd expected. My name is Garrett Sullivan. I served 8 years in the United States Navy, including 5 combat deployments to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. I left the military with 3 combat decorations and severe post-traumatic stress disorder. Atlas shifted at his feet. Garrett drew strength from the movement. On October 14th of last year, I checked into a motel in Whitefish, Montana with my service dog, Atlas. I was driving to my brother's wedding, 14 hours on the road, and all I wanted was a room to sleep in. What happened in the next 7 minutes changed my life, and I hope it will change the lives of veterans across this country. The room was silent, complete attention. Garrett told the story, not the sanitized version, the real version. Crystal's accusations, the illegal fees. You don't look disabled. The humiliation of having his legitimacy questioned, his service dismissed, his wounds called into doubt. He told them about Wade's intervention, about the corporate response, about how one night of standing his ground had led to policy changes across 340 hotels, about the 92% reduction in complaints, about the other veterans who would never know his name but would benefit from his refusal to stay silent. I didn't stand up that night because I'm brave, Garrett said. His voice was quieter now, but somehow more powerful. I stood up because I was tired. Tired of apologizing for my invisible wounds. Tired of proving my service dog was real. Tired of watching other veterans face the same discrimination and give up. He looked at the committee members. Some were leaning forward. Several had stopped taking notes. The men and women who served this country deserve better than what I experienced. They deserve to check into a motel without being accused of fraud. They deserve to eat at a restaurant without being questioned about their disability. They deserve to exist in public spaces without having to justify their need for the support animals that keep them alive. Atlas shifted again. Garrett put his hand on the dog's head. This dog has saved my life more times than I can count. He wakes me from nightmares where I'm back in Fallujah, watching my teammates die. He senses panic attacks before I know they're coming. He gives me the courage to walk into rooms like this one, even when every instinct tells me to run. His voice cracked slightly, but he didn't stop. Service animals aren't pets with fake documentation. They're lifelines. They're the difference between a veteran who can function in society and one who can't leave his house. They're worth protecting. And so are the veterans who depend on them. Garrett stopped. The prepared conclusion was gone. He'd said what needed saying, truth instead of performance. The room was silent for 3 heartbeats. 4, 5. Then Senator Harrison spoke. His voice was rough with emotion. Commander Sullivan, on behalf of this committee, thank you for your service and for your courage in sharing your story. We will take your testimony under serious consideration as we draft legislation to address these critical gaps in the law. Garrett nodded. He gathered his papers and stood. Atlas rose with him, positioned perfectly. They walked out together. Catherine was waiting in the hallway. She didn't say anything, just pulled him into a hug and held on. I'm proud of you, she whispered. Your father is proud of you. Every veteran you just spoke for is proud of you. Tyler was calling before they reached the parking lot. Then Rachel, then Wade, then Lawrence. The celebration could wait. Right now, Garrett just wanted to go home. 4 months later, Garrett sat in Tyler's living room watching the president sign legislation into law. The Garrett Sullivan Service Animal Protection Act made it a federal offense to discriminate against veterans with service animals. Mandatory fines, mandatory training, clear consequences for violations. William was on Garrett's lap, 7 months old now, and fascinated by everything. Atlas lay at Garrett's feet, tail thumping slowly. Tyler and Rachel sat on the couch, Rachel's hand resting on her growing belly. Catherine had moved from Virginia to Montana, buying a small house 2 streets over. Family, all of them together. Uncle Garrett's famous, Tyler said with a grin. Uncle Garrett just wanted to check into a motel. And instead you changed federal law. Rachel shook her head. How does it feel? Garrett looked at his nephew, at his brother, at his mother, at Atlas. Feels like the beginning, he said. The statistics came later. 12,000 veterans assisted in the first 6 months. 340 businesses fined for violations. $2.1 million in compensation to victims. 89% reduction in discrimination complaints nationwide. But the number that mattered most to Garrett was one. One veteran who walked into a hotel and wasn't questioned. One person who didn't have to prove their wounds were real. One life made slightly easier because Garrett had refused to stay silent. 1 year after the testimony, Garrett found himself back at the Northwoods Inn. Tyler's anniversary dinner family gathering. What mattered was the moment Garrett walked through the doors with Atlas. A different clerk stood behind the desk. Young professional, genuinely welcoming. Good evening. Welcome to Northwoods. Is that a service dog? Garrett tensed instinctively. Old reflex. Yes. What a beautiful German Shepherd. We're certified ADA Platinum now. I just need to confirm you're aware of your rights. No fees, no documentation required unless you'd like to provide it full access to all facilities. Garrett exhaled. Thank you. Actually, the clerk paused. Are you Garrett Sullivan? The law. Yeah. It's an honor, sir. My brother's Army. He has a service dog for TB. Your law made his life so much easier. Garrett nodded, not trusting his voice. On the wall behind the desk hung a plaque. 88 Compliance Excellence Award, inspired by the Sullivan Act. He checked into the same room. Presidential suite. They'd compromised on a veteran's discount. He sat on the bed. Atlas jumped up beside him. Garrett pulled out his phone and scrolled to the photo. Martinez Peterson Williams grinning at the camera. Couldn't save you guys, but maybe I saved someone else. Atlas licked his hand. Garrett's phone buzzed. Tyler, party in an hour. William asking for you. He stood. Outside, the Montana sun was setting. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight there was family. Purpose, the knowledge that he'd made a difference. Atlas barked once. Ready? Garrett scratched behind the dog's ears. Yeah, buddy, me too. They walked out together into the golden light. Behind them, the motel lobby hummed. Ahead, family waited. And somewhere in America, a veteran was checking into a hotel with their service dog, unaware of the battle that had been fought so they wouldn't have to. The mission continued. One veteran at a time. One life at a time. Atlas's tail wagged. Garrett drove toward home. Peace, not the absence of pain, but the acceptance of what he'd done. What he could do. What mattered. The mountains turned purple. The stars emerged. And Garrett Sullivan finally was home.